A woman insulted a homeless veteran and mocked him. Seeing this, the nearby bikers couldn't stay silent. Their reaction left everyone around completely speechless. Marcus sat against the brick wall outside the diner, his cardboard sign resting on his lap. The morning crowd rushed past, most avoiding eye contact. His worn military jacket hung loose on his frame. The patches faded, but still visible. He wasn't asking for much, just enough to eat. The woman in the designer coat stopped abruptly. She stared at him with disgust, her expensive purse clutched tight. "Get a job," she snapped. "Stop begging, and do something with your life." Marcus looked up slowly. "Ma'am, sir." "I don't care what you did," she interrupted. "You're probably lying anyway. People like you are just lazy." Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Ride for Justice. Her voice grew louder, attracting attention from passers-by. "My tax dollars shouldn't support people sitting on sidewalks. You're what's wrong with this country." Marcus stayed quiet. He'd heard it before. The words hurt less than they used to, but they still cut deep. He glanced at his sign, the one explaining he was a veteran who'd fallen on hard times. The woman kicked his cup, scattering the few coins across the pavement. "Pathetic," she muttered. Across the street, 3 motorcycles sat parked. Their engines were silent, but their riders weren't. Jake, the oldest of the group, had noticed everything. His jaw tightened as he watched the woman berate Marcus. Next to him, Tommy and Sarah exchanged looks. They'd seen enough. Jake dismounted first. His leather vest bore patches from motorcycle clubs across the state, but one patch stood out, a military insignia. Tommy and Sarah followed, their boots heavy on the pavement. The crowd began to notice them approaching, whispers spreading quickly. The woman didn't see them coming. She was too busy lecturing Marcus about personal responsibility, her voice dripping with contempt. Marcus just sat there accepting the abuse like he accepted everything else life threw at him. But things were about to change in ways nobody expected. Jake stood behind the woman, his shadow falling across her. "That's enough," he said quietly. She spun around, startled. Her eyes went from Jake to Tommy to Sarah, taking in their leather vests, their worn jeans, the chains hanging from their belts. Her expression shifted from shock to indignation. "Excuse me," she said, "this is none of your business." "You made it our business," Tommy replied. His voice was calm but firm. "When you kicked that cup, you crossed a line." The woman's face flushed. "I can say whatever I want. This is public property, and I'm tired of seeing these people everywhere I go." Sarah knelt beside Marcus, helping him collect the scattered coins. She noticed the military patches on his jacket, the purple heart pin barely hanging on. Her expression softened. "Thank you for your service," she said quietly. Marcus nodded, uncomfortable with the attention. "You don't have to." "Yes, we do," Jake interrupted. He turned to the woman. "Do you know what that jacket means? What those patches represent?" The woman rolled her eyes. "Anyone can buy a military jacket at a thrift store. He's probably never even served." A crowd had gathered now. People held up phones, recording. The diner's owner stepped outside, arms crossed, watching. The woman seemed oblivious to how this was unfolding, too caught up in her righteousness to notice the turning tide. Jake reached into his wallet and pulled out a card. "Here's my number. Call the VA hospital and ask about Marcus Bennett. Ask them how many tours he did. Ask them about the IED that took half his unit." The woman's confidence wavered slightly. "I still don't think." "You don't think," Tommy cut her off. "That's the problem. You see someone down and you kick them instead of helping." Sarah stood up, her eyes hard. "We were in that diner having breakfast. We saw everything. You didn't just insult him once. You stood here for 5 minutes tearing him apart." The woman looked around, finally realizing how many people were watching. Her face went red. "He shouldn't be here," she insisted, but her voice had lost its edge. Jake shook his head. "Lady, you have no idea who you're talking to. But you're about to find out." Marcus tried to stand, but his leg buckled slightly. Jake caught his arm, steadying him. The woman stepped back, looking increasingly uncomfortable, as the bikers formed a protective circle around the veteran. "I don't need this," she said, trying to leave. "Wait," Jake said. "It wasn't a request. You wanted to judge this man. Now you're going to hear his story." The crowd pressed closer. Someone from the diner brought out a chair, and Marcus sat down heavily. He didn't want the attention, but Jake gave him an encouraging nod. "Tell them," Jake said. Tell them what you told me last month when we first met. Marcus cleared his throat. I enlisted at 19, did 3 tours overseas. On my last deployment, our convoy hit an IED. I survived, 3 of my friends didn't. The woman shifted uncomfortably. That's terrible, but… Let him finish, Sarah said sharply. Marcus continued. I came home with PTSD, nightmares that wouldn't stop. The VA tried to help, but there's only so much they can do. I worked construction for years, but the flashbacks got worse. Started having panic attacks on the job, got fired. He paused, his hands shaking slightly. Lost my apartment 6 months ago. Been on the street since. I'm not lazy. I'm sick. There's a difference. Tommy stepped forward. We met Marcus at a veterans meeting last month. He's been trying to get back on his feet. Applications everywhere, but nobody wants to hire someone with no address. Jake pulled out his phone. Lady, you want proof? Here's his discharge papers. His Purple Heart citation. Medical records from the VA showing his PTSD diagnosis. The woman barely glanced at the phone. I didn't know, she mumbled. You didn't ask, Sarah replied. You just assumed. You saw someone vulnerable and decided to make yourself feel superior. The diner owner approached. Marcus eats here sometimes. Always polite, always grateful. He never causes trouble. Can't say the same for you. The woman's face went pale. People in the crowd murmured agreement. Someone shouted, leave him alone. Another person called out, apologize. But Jake held up his hand. She doesn't get off that easy. An apology means nothing if you don't understand what you did wrong. He looked at the woman directly. You didn't just insult one man. You insulted everyone who's served, everyone who's struggled, everyone who's fallen on hard times. People aren't disposable. The woman stood frozen, her earlier confidence completely gone. Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. What do you want from me? She asked. Her voice small. Jake exchanged glances with Tommy and Sarah. We want you to understand, he said. Real understanding, not just words. Sarah pulled out her phone. We run a veteran support group. We help guys like Marcus every day. Some need housing. Some need jobs. Some just need people who understand what they've been through. Tommy added, we're not saints. We're just people who give a damn. And when we see someone treating a veteran like trash, we step in. Marcus spoke up quietly. I don't want revenge. I just want to live with dignity. The woman's eyes filled with tears, but whether from shame or anger wasn't clear. I said I didn't know. What more do you want? Action, Jake replied. Not knowing is an excuse the first time, but now you know. What are you going to do about it? The diner owner spoke up again. I'll tell you what I'm doing. Marcus, you want a job? I need someone to help with morning prep. It's not much, but it's a start. Marcus's eyes widened. Seriously? Seriously, you can start tomorrow. We'll figure out the rest as we go. The crowd applauded. Someone called out, that's how you do it. Another person approached Marcus, pressing money into his hand. For you, brother. Thank you for your service. More people came forward. A woman offered contact information for a shelter with veteran services. A man who owned an apartment building mentioned he had a studio available. Another veteran in the crowd came over to shake Marcus's hand, tears in his eyes. Jake turned back to the woman. See what happens when people care. This is community. This is humanity. You could have been part of this. Instead, you tried to tear someone down. The woman wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't tell me, Jake said. Tell him. She turned to Marcus, but before she could speak, he held up his hand. I forgive you, he said simply. But please, next time, remember that everyone has a story. Everyone's fighting battles you can't see. The woman nodded, unable to speak. She reached into her purse, pulled out several bills, and placed them in Marcus's cup. Then she walked away quickly, disappearing into the crowd. The bikers stayed with Marcus as more people came forward to help. News of what happened spread fast. By afternoon, the video had thousands of views online. Comments poured in, some praising the bikers, others sharing their own stories about homeless veterans. Local news picked it up, wanting interviews. Jake, Tommy, and Sarah sat with Marcus in the diner, drinking coffee. The owner had refused to let them pay, grateful for what they'd done. Marcus looked overwhelmed by the sudden attention. This is too much, Marcus said, looking at his phone buzzing with messages. I don't deserve all this. Yes, you do, Sarah insisted. Every bit of it. Tommy leaned forward. Marcus, you're not alone anymore. You've got people in your corner now. Jake's phone rang. He answered, listened, then smiled. That was the owner of a construction company. Saw the video. Says he's a veteran too. Wants to offer you a job and housing. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. This morning I was just trying to get enough money for lunch. Now things are different, Sarah said. But this isn't charity. You earned this respect a long time ago. People are just finally paying attention. A woman entered the diner and approached their table. She introduced herself as a social worker, specializing in veteran services. Mr. Bennett, I've been trying to reach veterans like you for years. Can we talk about getting you enrolled in our programs? Marcus nodded, speechless. The social worker sat down and began outlining resources, counseling, job training, housing assistance, medical care. Things Marcus had tried to access before but couldn't navigate alone. Outside, more bikers arrived. Word had spread through the motorcycle community, and they came to show support. Their motorcycles lined the street, a show of solidarity. They weren't all veterans themselves, but they all believed in standing up for those who'd served. The diner owner came over. Marcus, I meant what I said about the job, but with all these opportunities coming in, I want you to take whatever's best for you. No pressure. Marcus's voice broke. Thank you, all of you. I thought I was invisible. I thought nobody cared. Jake put a hand on his shoulder. You are never invisible. Sometimes people just need to be reminded to look. As the afternoon wore on, more support arrived. A local veterans organization sent representatives. A lawyer offered free help navigating VA benefits. A dentist volunteered free dental care. A clothing store owner brought new clothes. Tommy watched it all with satisfaction. This is what should happen. Always. Sarah agreed. People want to help. They just need to see the need. That woman this morning, she wasn't evil, she was ignorant. But ignorance can be changed. 3 days later, the woman returned. She parked across from the diner and sat in her car for 20 minutes, gathering courage. Finally, she got out and walked inside. Marcus was there, having coffee with Jake and some other veterans. He'd shaved, gotten new clothes, and looked healthier. The woman approached hesitantly. Mr. Bennett, she said quietly. Marcus looked up, surprised. Yes? I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to apologize properly. What I said was inexcusable. Marcus gestured to an empty chair. Sit down. She sat carefully, her expensive coat looking out of place among the worn leather jackets. I haven't stopped thinking about what happened. I was cruel and judgmental. I made assumptions without knowing anything about you. Jake watched her carefully, ready to intervene if needed. But something in her demeanor seemed genuine. I've been volunteering at a veterans shelter this week, she continued. I wanted to understand. I've met so many people with stories like yours. I never realized. Realized what? Marcus asked gently. How easy it is to fall through the cracks. How one bad break can spiral into disaster. How much you all sacrificed. She paused. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. Marcus studied her face. What's your name? Jennifer. Jennifer, I already told you I forgive you, but I appreciate you coming back. Most people wouldn't. She smiled slightly. Those bikers scared me into becoming a better person. Jake laughed. That's what we do, scare people into human decency. Jennifer pulled out a folder. I work in corporate HR. I've convinced my company to start a hiring initiative for veterans. We're partnering with job training programs and offering support services. Tommy leaned forward, interested. That's real change. It's a start, Jennifer said. We're also setting up a fund to help with housing deposits for veterans transitioning off the street. And I'm personally donating to veteran organizations monthly. Sarah nodded approvingly. Actions matter more than words. Jennifer turned back to Marcus. I'd like to offer you a position if you're interested. Office maintenance to start, but with opportunities to move up. Full benefits, including mental health coverage. Marcus looked stunned. Why would you do this for me? Because you deserved better than how I treated you. Because you deserve opportunities, not judgment. And because I want to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. 2 months later, Marcus stood in front of a group of at-risk veterans at Jake's community center. He wore clean work clothes, his face fuller, his eyes clearer. The nightmares still came sometimes, but less often. He had an apartment now, a job, a routine. I'm not going to lie to you, Marcus said. It's hard. Some days I still struggle, but I'm here to tell you it gets better when you have support. Jake, Tommy, and Sarah sat in the back, watching proudly. Their intervention that morning had sparked something bigger than any of them expected. The local community had rallied, donations poured in, and their veteran support program had tripled in size. Jennifer attended too, having become a regular volunteer. She'd found purpose in helping others, her life transformed by that confrontation. She caught Marcus's eye and smiled encouragingly. Marcus continued, "Someone asked me recently if I was angry about what happened, about hitting rock bottom, about being humiliated on that sidewalk. The truth is, I'm grateful." A murmur went through the room. Marcus raised his hand. "I know that sounds crazy, but hitting bottom forced change. It made people see. It connected me with people who cared. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes." After the meeting, several veterans approached Marcus, thanking him for sharing his story. One young man, recently discharged and struggling, asked for advice. Marcus put his arm around him. "First thing, don't be afraid to ask for help. And don't let anyone make you feel small." Outside, the bikers prepared to leave. Their motorcycles gleamed in the late afternoon sun. But before they left, Jake pulled Marcus aside. "You did good in there," Jake said. Marcus shook his head. "You did good, you and Tommy and Sarah. You didn't have to step in that day." "Yes, we did," Jake replied. "That's what we do. We stand up for those who've stood up for us." Tommy joined them. "Got word today. 3 more companies want to join the Veteran Hiring Initiative, and that shelter Jennifer's been working with. They're expanding." Sarah added, "The diner owner told me he's hired 2 more veterans. Says Marcus inspired him." Marcus looked at the community center, at the people inside still talking and connecting. "This all started because someone insulted me. Funny how things work out. It started because we decided we'd had enough," Jake corrected. "Enough of good people being treated like trash. Enough of veterans being ignored. Enough of standing by while injustice happened." A motorcycle roared to life, then another. The bikers began to leave, but Jake lingered. "You need anything, you call, day or night." Marcus nodded. "I will. And Jake, thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." Jake climbed on his motorcycle. "Brother, you were never invisible. Some people just weren't looking. We made them look." As the motorcycles pulled away, their engines rumbling through the street, Marcus watched them go. He thought about that morning, sitting against that wall, feeling hopeless. He thought about Jennifer's cruel words, the Stetter coins, the humiliation. Then he thought about what came after. The bikers stepping in. The community rallying, the opportunities arriving, the second chance he never expected. He went back inside, where more veterans waited. Some were homeless, like he'd been. Some were struggling with similar demons. But now, they had hope, resources, and people who cared. Marcus would make sure they knew they weren't alone. The confrontation that left everyone speechless had sparked a movement. Not because of the insult, but because of the response. Because 3 bikers decided that enough was enough. Because a community chose compassion over indifference. Because one man's struggle became everyone's call to action. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of the community center, Marcus Bennett finally felt like he'd come home. Inside the community center, Marcus found Jennifer setting up for the evening's workshop. She'd transformed from the woman who kicked his cup into someone genuinely committed to change. She noticed him watching and walked over. "I was thinking," Jennifer said, "about expanding the program. We have companies willing to hire, but we need better transition support. Housing is just the start." Marcus nodded. "A lot of guys can't handle the sudden change, going from the street to an apartment, from no structure to a full-time job. It's overwhelming. What if we created a mentorship program?" Jennifer suggested. "Pair each veteran with someone who's been through it, someone like you." Before Marcus could respond, Jake walked back in. "Forgot my phone," he said, but his expression suggested otherwise. He'd been listening. "That's actually brilliant. We've been doing informal mentoring, but making it official could help more people." Sarah and Tommy returned with him. "We couldn't leave without discussing next steps," Sarah admitted. "This thing we started, it's bigger than any of us expected." They gathered around a table, and Marcus grabbed a notepad. What began as a casual conversation evolved into serious planning. They discussed funding, partnerships, and outreach. Jennifer offered her company's conference room for larger lurgies. Jake mentioned grant opportunities through veteran organizations. A knock interrupted them. The young veteran from earlier stood at the door, another man beside him. Sorry to bother you, he said. This is my friend Carlos. He just got evicted. I thought maybe. Marcus stood immediately. Come in, let's talk. Carlos looked rough, unshaven, clothes dirty, eyes hollow with despair. Marcus recognized that look intimately. It was the same one he'd worn 2 months ago, the same one he'd see in the mirror on his worst days. Sit down, Carlos, Marcus said gently. Tell us what happened. Carlos's story spilled out. Injured in combat, medically discharged, returned home to find his girlfriend gone and his apartment given away. Tried to work through the pain, physical and mental, but the pills the doctors prescribed led to dependency. Lost his job, then his housing. Been sleeping in his car for 3 weeks, until it got repossessed yesterday. Jennifer listened with tears in her eyes. This was the reality she'd been blind to, the humanity she'd dismissed with cruel words just weeks ago. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling the shelter. They have emergency beds. Already full, Carlos said quietly. I checked this morning. Jake stood. Then you're coming home with me tonight. I've got a spare room. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. Tommy added, I know a guy who runs a pain management clinic that specializes in veterans, helps people get off the pills safely, manages pain without addiction. I'll make the call. Sarah was already typing on her laptop. There's an opening at the manufacturing plant. They specifically want to hire veterans, pay is decent, and they work with people who have physical limitations. Carlos looked around the table, stunned. Why are you all helping me? You don't even know me. Marcus leaned forward. 2 months ago, I was you. Sitting against a wall, people walking past like I was invisible. Then someone decided I mattered. Now, it's my turn to do the same for you. The young veteran who brought Carlos spoke up. This is what I was telling you about. These people don't just talk, they act. Jennifer wiped her eyes. Carlos, I'm also going to make some calls. My company has an employee assistance fund. It's meant to help people get back on their feet. Let me see what I can do. Over the next hour, they built a plan for Carlos. Temporary housing with Jake, medical appointments scheduled, job interview arranged, and enrollment in support services initiated. What seemed impossible when Carlos walked in became achievable through thoughtful effort. As Carlos left with Jake, his eyes held something they hadn't before, hope. Marcus watched them go and felt something shift inside him. He'd gone from being helped to being the helper. The cycle was yet just beginning. Sarah turned to Marcus. You know what this means, right? You can't just be a maintenance worker at Jennifer's company. You need to be coordinating this program full-time. Marcus hesitated. I just got stable. I'm not sure I'm ready. You're exactly ready, Tommy interrupted. You've lived it. You understand what these guys need, because you needed it yourself. That's invaluable. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. We could restructure your position, make you the Veteran Services Coordinator. Better pay, and you'd be doing what you're clearly meant to do. Marcus felt overwhelmed. This is happening so fast. Life changes fast, Jake said from the doorway. He'd returned again. Sometimes for the worse, like when you lost everything. Sometimes for the better, like right now. Don't be afraid of it. The weeks that followed proved transformative. Marcus accepted the coordinator position and threw himself into the work. He created intake procedures, built relationships with service providers, and personally reached out to homeless veterans throughout the city. Jennifer's company became the program's anchor sponsor, providing funding and resources. Other businesses joined, creating a network of veteran-friendly employers. The bikers continued their street outreach, identifying veterans who needed help and connecting them with services. One afternoon, Marcus received a call from a local television station. They wanted to do a feature story on the program. Marcus hesitated, but Jennifer encouraged him. People need to see what's possible. What story inspires action? The interview aired on the evening news. Marcus spoke about his journey from homelessness to helping others. He credited the bikers who intervened, the community that rallied, and even Jennifer, whose initial cruelty sparked necessary change. The segment ended with information about how viewers could support veteran services. The response was immediate. Donations flooded in. Volunteers signed up. More companies offered jobs. The phone at the community center rang constantly with veterans seeking help and citizens wanting to contribute. But success brought challenges. The program grew faster than they could manage. They needed more space, more staff, more structure. Marcus found himself working 16-hour days, trying to help everyone who reached out. Sarah noticed his exhaustion. You're burning out. You can't help others if you destroy yourself. Marcus knew she was right, but guilt plagued him. Every day I wait, someone else is suffering. I was that person. I can't turn anyone away. You're not turning them away, Tommy said. You're building something sustainable. That takes time. They hired additional coordinators, all veterans themselves. They rented office space adjacent to the community center. They created systems and protocols. What started as spontaneous compassion evolved into a functioning organization. 6 months after the sidewalk confrontation, they held a fundraising dinner. Over 200 people attended, including city officials, business leaders, and dozens of veterans they'd helped. Carlos was there, 6 months sober, working full-time and living in his own apartment. He'd become a mentor himself, helping newly enrolled veterans navigate the program. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. He spotted Jennifer at a front table, her teenage daughter beside her. Jennifer had brought her daughter to volunteer regularly, teaching her compassion through action. He saw Jake, Tommy, and Sarah at another table, surrounded by bikers who'd joined their cause. 6 months ago, Marcus began, I was kicked while I was down. Someone decided I was worthless, disposable, beneath contempt. She was wrong, but I'd started believing it myself. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Then 3 strangers decided I mattered. They stood up when they didn't have to. They saw a veteran being disrespected and said, "Not today." That moment changed everything. The room was silent, everyone listening intently. But here's what I've learned, Marcus continued. That confrontation wasn't the real story. The real story is what happened next. A community came together, people chose compassion over judgment, and we built something that's helped over 100 veterans find their way home. Applause filled the room. Marcus waited for it to quiet. We're not done. Hundreds more veterans need help. But now we have the foundation, the resources, and most importantly, the will to continue. Every person in this room is part of that solution. As Marcus finished speaking, Jennifer approached the stage. She'd asked to say something. Marcus stepped aside, and she took the microphone. "I'm the woman who kicked that cup," she said simply. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Many had seen the viral video but didn't know her identity.